Mets baseball on Locked Up Sports starts now.
So as we sit here 2 days removed from just a complete disaster by the New York Mets, a complete collapse, still having egg on our face from what we said last year at this time, from what we said in the offseason about Juan Soto, from what we said to the Yankees fans that is now being thrown back into our face by all of our Yankee fan friends and continues to be. And as we sit here and I watch the Cubs beat the Padres in game one, and I watched before that the Tigers win game one over the Indians, I'm still somewhat in disbelief that the Mets aren't playing. And it's not because I thought they were deserved to be there or because they were better than some of these teams. It's just that I didn't think they'd let it get away from them like this. I mean, this was just a collapse of epic proportions, and it came all the way down to the last day, and they no-showed on a game against the Marlins, which they've heard. They know whether they're Mets fans growing up. See, we all are Mets fans. As Mets fans, we feel the pain from 2006 and 2007 and 2008, where we got the Marlins, came into our stadium, and they closed down Shea Stadium, and they beat us on the final day, and they scored 7 runs against Tommy Glavine in the first inning. We all feel that. These guys, they're not Mets fans generally. They're not even baseball fans, some of these players, but they don't feel it like we do. So we felt it, but they heard it, and they know what it, and they knew about it, and they went into Miami with a chance to just erase everything that happened over the last 4 or 5 months. And they couldn't even score a run. 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position. 10 men left on base. And the worst possible thing that happened is they controlled their own destiny the whole way. Because the Reds backed into the playoffs. None of these teams wanted to grab it over the last 2 weeks. The Giants, the Diamondbacks, none of them. The Reds backed in. The Mets couldn't grab it. They couldn't. And it's just so frustrating with this team. And now I wanted to wait like a day or two. I wanted to let the press conferences come out and have them it be done and settled. Because I'll tell you what, I got a bunch of texts from Yankee fans who say they don't hate the Mets or anything, but I got a bunch of texts as soon as that 4-6-3 double play was completed, before even Pete Alonso opted out of his contract. My texts were filled with Yankee fans giving me a hard time. And they still today are continuing to give me a hard time, even though they have a game today. They are loving this. And you know what? You know what I could say? Nothing. Nothing. Because once again, the Mets have embarrassed themselves, and they've embarrassed their fan base. And their fan base who bought in. We all bought in. I was at about 40 to 45, maybe even 50 games this year. Okay, and there was we drew 3 million fans, and that place was rocking. It was the best atmosphere in baseball for most of the summer. And it didn't matter if you went on a Saturday night or a Tuesday night. It was rocking either night. And that's who this sucks for the most, is the Mets fans. Because we were asked by Steve Cohen last year. We didn't show up, he said. We didn't get the attendance he wanted. And they made that run, and we loved it. And then this year, we said, we got you. We went in there 3 million strong. Party scene atmosphere, playoff atmosphere on Tuesday and Wednesday nights, just as much as it was on Saturday nights. And this is what we get in return from this team. And it's the same thing we've gotten from this team for the last God knows how many years, probably from the beginning of the franchise. It just never works out for us. Never. And this time, it's not that they didn't try. It might look like they didn't try, because that's what it looks like when a team can't hit, doesn't score any runs, they leave runners all over the base pass. It looks like they're not trying. They were trying. But they didn't have any urgency. They didn't have any care. It didn't look like Soto cared that the season ended there, that he was going to have to take a ton of criticism over these next couple of days, because he's just going to go march off to vacation with his $50 million from this year. And he earned it. He earned every penny of it. He was the best, probably one of the best players on the Mets. The only person I see who really cares, who at least wears it on his sleeve, is Pete Alonso. And now I don't know if Pete's going to be back. Listen, if he's back, great. I think he should be back. I think they should definitely have him and Soto. Listen, he shut everybody up here this year. He had a great year. He hit a ton of home runs. He hit big home runs when the lights are the brightest. He came through in the clutch last year with the home run. This year, a bunch of times he hit some big home runs. He had the pressure of the record going after Strawberry, becoming the all-time Mets home run hitter. And he's a excellent player. His fielding leaves a little to desired. And you could go over a million things that are the reason why this team did what they did and are what they are. And it's hard to fathom because when you look at the numbers, Soto had a great year, just a great year. Lindor, who slumped a little bit, he had a great year. You know how many leadoff home runs he hit? And the Mets couldn't capitalize. Pete had a great year. Now, they were a top-heavy lineup because the bottom of the lineup couldn't hit the water if they jumped out of a boat. I get that. And you could say it's the pitching, which came apart at the seams after a month. I mean, we all thought that they didn't have the pitching, that this wasn't a good staff, and Stern sat there and told us we were all wrong. Just, trust him. We trusted him last year, so we thought, okay, maybe he's right. He is the smartest guy in the room, right? And we trusted it, and it fell apart at the seams a month into the thing. Injuries. I mean, you got Kodai Senga, who was going to be your ace. He's in the minors to end the season. Sean Manaea has bone chips floating all over his arm. He pitched well on Sunday. Why I still don't understand why he only pitched two and a plus innings. But that's been those, and we're going to get to that in a second because I can't figure out what he's thinking when he makes some of these moves. And to have it end like it did with a fan base that bought in, with 85% of the people in the building in Miami wearing Mets shirts and Mets jerseys and Mets gear, to have them sit there and you go 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position, leave men all over the bases, look like you have no urgency, look like you were just relieved that it was over when it did end, is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. Because you know what? It hurts the Mets fan. It hurts us. It sucks. It sucks that we bought in. It sucks that we were fooled again, like we are every time. You had us out there after last year going around telling Yankee fans that there's a new big brother in town, that the Yankees are going to be irrelevant, that the Mets are taking the city over. And here we are 1 year later with Juan Soto sitting there with a stack of $50 million. And the Yankees are getting ready for game one. Because you couldn't figure it out. And as far as Mendoza coming back, and listen, Steve Cohen, we don't need your apologies. It's not Steve Cohen's fault. He did everything he could. He threw money at the thing, right? That's what he does. He throws money at things, and they're supposed to get better. He threw money at it. He gave it to Stearns. Stearns is supposed to be the young, hip, smart president of baseball operations, running the whole show. I don't need no GM. I am my own GM. That guy. He screwed it up. But it's not just his fault either. Because it's not a bad team they put together. The Mets have 3, maybe 4 Hall of Famers on this team. Soto, Lindor, Alonso, Diaz. That's 4 Hall of Famers. 3 of them in your everyday lineup. 3 of them in your infield. And we watched the infield kick the ball around, right? We watched Alonso, a.k.a. Mackey Sasser, just can't throw the ball home, can't throw the ball at first. Whatever. It is what it is. But this team had no heart. They had no drive. They didn't really want it. And they're a better team than the Giants. They're a better team than the Reds. They're better than the Marlins. I mean, can you imagine the Marlins with, I don't even know, probably an $85 million payroll and nothing to play for except the satisfaction of sending the Mets into the winter without going to the playoffs And the Mets had everything on the line, a playoff berth, all the criticism they're going to take, everything from last year on the line. And the Marlins came out and were more hungry to get that win on Sunday than the Mets were. That's what's embarrassing. When the Mets lose 4-0, they can't get a hit with runners in scoring position. That was just a complete no-show on Sunday. And how you should come into that game with a complete no-show after you got a brilliant pitching performance the night before to save your season and extend it one more day. And they came out and just like they were the rest of the whole season, they were inconsistent, and they just went with the opposite of what they did the day before, and they laid an egg, and they lose 4-0 in just a ho-hum, no urgency type of game. A disaster. A disaster that was brewing for 4 months. It was like a car crash in slow motion. Because we saw it coming. And I'm at the front of the line that I thought they were gonna avoid the car crash just barely and get into the playoffs. And I was dead wrong because they no-showed on Sunday, the biggest game of the season, a team that had nothing to play for but to send you into the offseason. Beat you bad on Sunday. 4-0. Not even close. They had one chance. And I think the 4th or the 5th inning, and Alonso made it there. They had Alonso, Lindor, Soto coming up, bases loaded, and they could get nothing. And listen, there's bad luck involved in there too, and Mets fans know it, right? Alonso hit the hardest ball off a bat that any Met hit all season with the bases loaded in the 5th inning, and he hit it right, a deadline drive to the center fielder. That's just Mets luck. You know, that's going to happen. That's something that we just have accepted as is going to happen, and we have to overcome it. You know, it's kind of having like a little disability, but you could still, become successful in life. You just have to overcome one more obstacle than most people. And that's what the Mets have. And that's what that Alonso hit with the bases loaded, the line drive, 100-something, whatever it was off the bat. Hardest hit ball by a Met this season. And he hits it directly at the center fielder. That stuff you can't control. That's just the Mets, the burden that they have to deal with. But nothing else. Nothing. And the fans bought in. The problem was the team didn't buy in. This isn't a team. It's a group of good players. And being a Mets fan on days like and weeks like this, it sucks. Especially when you went out there and you talked your game because you were so sure that it was going to be different this time because we had an owner that was spending. We had a young, hot gun GM that was, smarter than everybody else. We made a big run last year out of nowhere, and we were going to just do it again this year, except we were going to extend it a couple more games. And they fell flat on their face. And like I said, you could blame a million things. You could say it was the pitching. Yeah, you could say it was the pitching, but they pitched well in some games too. They pitched decently. And you could say it was the hitting and the slumps. But you had these Hall of Fame players, potential Hall of Fame players that had good years. The Mets stole more. The Mets stole like 94 bases without a catcher throwing them out in a row. And yet somehow they had a 40-40 guy. They had Lindor. They had Alonso breaking the record. And somehow they had 3 losing streaks of 7 games or more. I don't know how it happened. It's the Mets. And they had us out there, pumping our chests last year, talking about who's the big brother. We're going to own this city. And now we got egg all over our face because your team doesn't want to play and doesn't want to win and get into the playoffs. Once the Marlins got 2 runs, that game was over. The Mets were dead and buried. They were never coming back. And then you get to Mendoza. And you get to whether or not Mendoza should stay or go. Listen, I said all year that I think he got a free pass this year because of what he did last year, and I can stick with that, right? I wouldn't be upset if they fired him. I'm not upset that they kept him, but he's got to get better. I can manage these games, and most people who watch baseball and know a little bit about baseball can manage these games from the couch and tell you who should come in to pitch, when they should come in to pitch, who you should pinch hit, who you should pitch run, what your bench is like. It's not that hard to manage a baseball game. That's not the hard part of managing. It's managing the bullpen day to day and stuff like that. And somehow in this game on Sunday, he's got Diaz, your best closer in baseball, in the game in the 5th inning. And his excuse is, well, we had to get out of that 5th inning because if it gets to 6 and 7 or 8, then it's over anyway. What were you going to do though if you came back? Were you going to pitch McNeil today in game 1 of the wild card series? Because that's where we were headed. They used 8 pitchers in like 6 innings. Diaz got the most outs in the game from any pitcher. It's just, sometimes he just looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. He's always wrong on the hook on the pitcher, on whether he should take him out, on the timing of it. Always wrong. He sometimes pinch hits the wrong guy where you're like, what are you doing putting this guy up there? Who's going to be your catcher? He pinch runs a guy that you should save to pinch hit later in the game. It looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. And it's the same thing after every game. Oh, we know we got the talent. We got to be better. I don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear it. And Steve Cohen doesn't owe us an apology either. We appreciate the apology, Steve Cohen, and that's fine. You know, you're the owner, you're the head of the ship, but you don't really owe us an apology. You did everything you could. You spent $350 million on this team. They got 83 wins. The Marlins got 4 games back of the Mets. 4 games. The Mets in June with 21 games over 500. 21 games over 500. And then they went 38-55. 38-55 is 15 games worse than the Marlins went in that same time. The Marlins. And then on top of that, you got beat out for the wild card by the Reds. The Reds. And you almost got beat by the Giants, a team that you dumped all your players to and took all their supposedly good bullpen pitchers. Stearns somehow made a bad bullpen even worse at the trade deadline. And he made it much worse. And he made the outfield and the lineup worse. I'd rather Tyrone Taylor in there any day of the week over Mullins. And the way this team would lose games, if you look at this, the Mets lost every one of these games. And if you can see, if you're not watching, I'll put it in the comments for you. If you're listening on the audio thing, it gives you the scenario. You know, it gives you basically the score bug on here, and it's just completely outrageous. I mean, let's just look at some of these games real quick. Okay, they lost. The Mets were up 7-1 in the bottom of the 7th inning against the Nationals. McGill on the mound. They lost. The Mets were up 4-0 on the Phillies. In the 1st inning, they put up 4 runs. Lost. 5-1 they were winning 5-1 in the bottom of the 5th with Frankie Montas on the mound, only 74 pitches in, and they lost. I mean, these are games that you can't lose. The Mets were 0-68. No comebacks in the entire season. 0-68 when trailing after 8 innings. That's unheard of. And even the bad Mets teams, when I was growing up, I remember the bad Mets teams, they were, okay, they're terrible. They would have those, here and there flashes of big comeback wins, and they put together a 9th inning where they hit a 3-run homer, Todd Hundley or something, it's a 3-run homer, and they'd come back and win. And that kind of kept you going. It was like being a guy out on the golf course. That was the one good golf shot that you hit for the day that keeps coming back the next day. With those wins. This team with Soto, Alonso, Lindor, Diaz, everybody. They were 0-68 when comebacks. That's not exciting. We put 3 million asses in those seats, and we saw 0 comebacks in the late innings. We put 3 million asses in those seats, and we saw a terrible bullpen that went weeks before Diaz saw the mound because they were so bad. We put 3 million asses in those seats and watched McNeil hit 250, Watch Vientos, who was a superstar, headed to be the next big third baseman in baseball, one of the best players in baseball, fall flat on his face and do nothing. We put 3 million asses in those seats and watch Alvarez, our catcher, who had 25 home runs the year before, who was a big part of the team going to the NLCS, get sent down to the minors. He was so bad. 3 million asses in those seats, and that's what we got for it. Nothing. And what took so long? You knew since June that the pitching staff was starting to come apart at the seams. And then it went in the tank pretty fast when after Senga went down. It went in the tank fast. And then they would piggyback in starters. They will bring in trying to find starters, pitchers going 3 innings, 4 innings all year. And you wait until the last 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks to bring up these kids who are studs. McLean is an ace of his staff. He could have been the ace of this staff since July, and maybe they'd be all right. He would have come in and he would have at least stabilized the damn thing because it just fell apart. You're having 8-game losing streaks and 7-game losing streaks all over the place. You can't stop the bleeding. And then they'd stop it for 4 or 5 days. And then it would just, the cut would open up again. And they happened to have a good start, so they were able to rely on the mirage of that good start and say that they were a good team. This is a complete disaster, a $350 million disaster, and I don't really care about the price of it. Now, like that's what people are using to say, oh, it's a monumental disaster because of the price. It's not my money. There's no salary cap. It's not my money. I don't really care what the cost was. I don't see why people really do. But the players and the names on this team are superstars. And they played well. They had good seasons. But they couldn't do it in the clutch. The magic wasn't there like the magic was there last year. Last year, the magic was there. Last year, that Alonso ball goes over the center field wall. He gets a little more lift on it with the bases loaded on Sunday, and it's a grand slam, and the Mets win that thing 6-4. This year, he hits the hardest ball a Met player hit all year, right at the center fielder, and the Mets lose 4-0. And they go down with a whimper. How could they let this happen? Listen, the Mets are better than these. The Mets are better than the Nationals. The Nationals are a bad baseball team. And you let them go in there, and they make these circus hacky sack catches, and they beat you 2 out of 3. Earlier in the season, you have a 7-1 lead in the 7th inning against the Nationals, and you lose. The starting pitchers can pitch 3 innings. 3 innings. They went like 3 weeks where they didn't have a starter go 4 innings, more than 4 innings. Forget about the whole thing where no starter besides Peterson went 7 innings for like 6 months. These are not starters. Those are not starters. That's not starting pitchers. And you had McLean in AAA. You had Sproat down there we were telling you to call up. You had Tong. Why didn't they bring him up? Why wait until it was almost too late and you're on life support to bring him up? And then you come in, you have one last chance, one last game to wipe it all clean and get to the postseason. You still, as bad as you were, as all that happened, you still had a chance. And the last day you controlled your own destiny. And you let the Reds back in ahead of you as you go down with a whimper and you're 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position. You leave 10 men on base and your pitcher goes 2 in the 3rd innings. He finally pitches a good game, Mania, and you take him out in the 3rd inning. This is why it's getting harder and harder to tell people we're Mets fans. And you know what? Shame on us. Shame on the Mets fan also for buying in so much. We were just gullible, I guess. We're just gullible. And we'll be there again next year. And we'll be doing the same thing because we'll be like, well, we have McLean. And we'll get off to a good start. Or we'll sweep the Yankees in the Subway Series in, I think it's in September. They play September 11th or something next year. And we'll sit there and we'll go, uh-oh, we're here to stay now. Own the city. Who the hell do we think we are? And now we got to wear it. because they're letting us have. At least my friends are letting me have it. Now, as far as Mendoza goes, listen, Mendoza makes some stupid things, like I said. Like, in that game, you're finally getting a decent pitching performance. You know you're going to need a bunch of pitches probably. Why do you not let Minaya go another let him get out of that inning? The second he took him out, he put in, I think it was Brooks Rally, and it was bam, a double up the gap, and it's 2-0. And the game's over right there. Even on the very last day, up until the very last day, he's screwing up these pitching changes. I mean, what, man, you know you're going to need these pitches, and then he ends up Rowley comes in, gives up the double, and then it's 4-0, and now he's like, oh, he panics, and he goes, I need Diaz, and before you know, it's the 5th inning, and Diaz is in there pitching, and you have nobody, even if they were to stop it and come back, you have nobody to pitch. It would have ended on a Helsley giving up a 3-run home run in the 10th inning or something, and they would have lost, because that's what he's there for. And now, yesterday after the press conferences, they're saying, and Stearns is saying, I'm thinking about, we'll think about possibly hiring a GM, and you can't let him make that decision, because that's like asking, when you ask Congress to vote in term limits. Why would they vote in term limits? They're voting themselves out of a job. He's not going to vote himself out of a job and say, oh yeah, I need a GM now. No, he's not, because he's arrogant, and he's the smartest man in the room. And he's smarter than you, and he's smarter than me. Well, at least he tells himself that. Now, as far as the free agents, Pete, listen, I last year I didn't want Pete. I wanted Guerrero, so just to clear the air there, I think Pete should come back. Give him the money. Right? Who are you going to get? Give Pete the money. You're going to have to suffer a bit on the back end in the last couple of years of the contract. He's probably going to need a 5-year contract. The Mets are probably going to want to give him 3. Give him the money. Okay? He opted out. He clearly is and he's a good Met. He's an all-time Met. Right? He's got the home run leader. He'll be making a push at 500 home runs. He's probably he might go to the Hall of Fame. And he works good right here in his prime with Soto in the lineup. They're a good 1-2 combination back-to-back in the lineup. It's a strong front of the lineup. The Mets have a very good top 5 lineup. Now, as far as Diaz goes, I don't know if Diaz is gonna even opt out. So that might be a non-issue with Diaz, whether he comes back or whether he doesn't, whether they should sign him, because he's making, I think it's like $17 million next year. So it's, you could live with, he could live with that. I don't know if he's gonna get that much anywhere else he goes, to be honest with you. I don't think Diaz is gonna be getting $20 million, although he did have a fantastic year, one of the best, the best year he's ever had at least. And, we'll see what he does. He still is, non-committal on whether he's going to opt out or not. Now, you also have, like, a lot of the names on this list are just kind of course they're gone, like Helsley and like Rogers, like those guys, of course, they're clearly going to be gone. But you have now other free agents that you need to make a decision on. You have Marte. What do you want to do with Marte? I love Marte. I think he's a baseball player. He's just a tough, he's a baseball player is what he is. He gets good. He gets hits when you need him. He's still, even now, he's getting a little bit older. He's got the knee issues. He can't play the field as much. I would see if you could get Marte, bring him in on maybe a little bit lower of a contract, and just keep him on this team, because he's a good presence to have in this locker room. I would bring Starling Marte back without a doubt right there. And then you got Frankie Montas. He's not going to opt out because he got hurt, and now we're stuck with Montas again. And I don't want to hear about Stearns not paying pitchers money. He doesn't like to pay pitchers money, because he gave Montas $32 million. And everybody knows that Montas stinks. Right? That was one of our big gripes about this. $32 million to Montas. What are you doing? So he's going to be there. You got Cedric Mullins. I don't want to see Cedric Mullins in New York State ever again with the way he played. He was supposed to come over here, bring a little pop to his bat. He hit 1 home run, and he hit it last week, and it was basically a meaningless home run. Helsley, you could follow Mullins right out of town. Winker was hurt all year. I don't know what you do with Winker, to be honest with you. You do. That's not a big deal. Not going to be a big deal. Soto, that's another one. The bullpen is year to year. You could jettison guys, bring them in. Some guys who had a big year this year might have a crappy year next year. That's just how it goes. Guys who were no good last year, I think the bullpen's the biggest crapshoot on a baseball team. So that's why I think Diaz is going to stay, because Diaz has had some bad years. He could be bad next year. You know, you never know. Griffin Canning, again, look, Griffin Canning, perfect example. Like, that was one of our starting pitchers. And he was pitching well to begin the season, but you had to know Griffin Canning is not going to keep this up. And Clay Holmes, give Clay Holmes credit, because we all sat here and we're like, he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it to 162 games. He's not going to make it through 40 starts or X amount of innings. He's never done it, and he was solid for most of the season. He hit a wall there at the end, but when they needed it late, his last 2 or 3 starts, Clay Holmes pitched well. Brooks Rowley, another one, Drew Smith, again, either. The big ones are obviously is Alonso. And I say just sign him, right? And I think what it's going to be another, Stearns doesn't want to sign him, doesn't want to give him the money, and then Cohen's going to swoop in, because that was a Cohen's signing last year. I don't think Stearns really wanted Alonso, but imagine, now Stearns didn't want Alonso. So imagine the bad year that Stearns had with Alonso. Imagine where this team is if Alonso's not on the team. And they don't get that production from Alonso. He had a great season this year. He shut everybody up after last year. Imagine he wasn't on the team this year. That's one of the saving graces for Stearns, because he wasn't an Alonso guy. He wasn't in the sign Alonso corner. He got overridden. There was a veto done by Cohen. And he said, well, we're bringing Alonso back. And I think it was that baseball that day in New York or whatever they had, that disaster in the middle of the winter at Citi Field. So, Stearns better be happy about that. Because if he didn't bring Alonso back, it'd be even worse. So that's what's going on. And listen, it sucks for the Mets. Like I said, it sucks for the Mets fans, because now we're catching it from all angles with the Yankee fans, because we went out there and we believed in it. And you told us last year that you weren't happy with the attendance. So we put $3 million in the seats, and we went out there and we talked a big game, and we're big brother. We're going to take over the city. Yankees' time is done, and now we're sitting here and we're getting slaughtered by the Yankee fans because we were idiots, and we bought into it, and we pumped our chests, and we said, we got Soto. We're going to be winning now. There's going to be an every year thing. You heard Brett say, we're going to be going to playoffs every year of my life, right? How stupid does that sound for a Mets fan to say, we're going to be going to the playoffs every year of my life? And he believed it. And I didn't tell him he was stupid, but it is stupid. And we said it because we believed in Stearns, and we believed in Cohen, and we believed in this team, and then they nosedived the whole season. And now we got to sit here, and I got a phone full of text messages from Yankee fans laughing at me. And that is your fault, not our fault. Because we were just good fans. We showed up. You asked us to show up, we showed up. It was a party atmosphere every Tuesday night. I was at 50 games this year. It was a wild scene. It was playoff atmosphere. The place was going crazy. On a Tuesday night, usually Tuesday night, there's 20,000 people in the park. And we filled it every night. I could barely sneak down to even good seats on some nights on a Tuesday. So that's what we got to deal with. And now we got to sit here and we got to watch the Yankees, who are the hottest team in baseball, probably just coast their way into the World Series. I hope that doesn't happen, because there's only so much of this stuff I could take. I got my inbox full. People I don't even know are texting me, how about the Mets? And I'm getting emojis and stuff on social media in my inbox from people I'd never even met. And then the real tough stuff comes in my group text with my friends, because it gets weird in there. And trust me, I'm catching a whooping, and Brett's right there catching it with me. So that's it. The Mets, and listen, we'll be back next year, right? March. We'll be back down in spring training, spending our money. We'll be back buying these season tickets, talking about, okay, now it's going to be different because we got so-and-so, or we re-signed Alonso. It's not going to be any different. The Mets, and listen, I'm sorry for the Mets fan, right? We didn't choose this. Nobody chooses this life. It's a tough life, but it is what it is, right? So we got to just stick with it, because it is, we are Mets fans, so we have to stick with it. But what a joke! This year was a joke, and I still don't think it was as bad as 2007 and 17. Not as bad, and I don't even think as historic either. Like I said, everyone says about the money, the $350. That doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter. There's no salary cap. It's not like they got the wrong players and now they can't have no maneuverability because the salary cap. It doesn't matter. You can throw them into the trash. He's got billions and billions of dollars. Throw the players, throw Mullins in the river and have him and throw Halsey right behind him in the river and go get 2 other guys. Who cares? That's what the point of Steve Cohen is. Because he's got endless money, right? So the money doesn't matter. That's what people are using to make it, it's such a bad because it's $350 million. It doesn't matter. It's a drop in the bucket. And Steve Cohen did nothing wrong because he spent $350 million. That's all he could do. He's not a baseball. He's not like he picks stocks. He doesn't pick baseball players. But I do bet he could sit on his couch like I can and like most people can and tell you who should be coming in to pitch. And I bet he's not going to put Diaz in the 5th inning of a do-or-die game. I'm telling you, if the Mets came back and won that game, you'd have Jeff McNeil pitching today. Game 1. Because they didn't have any pitchers. Because they used 8 pitchers in like 4 innings. So that's what it is. It is what it is. It's not the first time we've been here, the Mets fans. We've had worse than this. It's not that bad, right? So we lost. We were with all that money and all that hype, and we were 4 games over 500. 4 games ahead of the Marlins, who did it. You want to talk about money? They did it with like pennies. They lost to the Reds. The Reds backed into the playoffs. The Mets controlled their own destiny. They didn't know it till the last inning, but they controlled their own destiny the whole way. And they fell on their face, and they let the Reds back into the playoffs, and the Reds aren't going to do anything. Reds are no good. Terry Francona, they got a great manager. That's what they got. Hall of Fame manager. But the team is not great. Mets are better. Giants were never good. They didn't want it. Nobody went and grabbed it. That thing was, you had teams losing all over the place the last 3 weeks. Mets lost 8 in a row. Then the Reds couldn't buy a win. They were getting swept by the Dodgers. Then the Giants got swept by the Dodgers. Nobody wanted to win it. Somebody had to back in, and it just so happened to be the Cincinnati Reds. So that's a wrap on the Mets 2025 season. Not much different than a lot of other seasons. Maybe more disappointing because they kind of led you along, but at least you got to enjoy it, through. A lot of times it's June and it's over. And you're like, oh, great, And the football's not much better. I mean, listen, Miami's been a rough spot this week, right? The Jets go down there. That's a whole nother disaster. I feel bad, even worse, because there's a bunch of them, Mets fans that went down there, said, oh, you know what? We're going to go to the game Saturday and Sunday, and we'll make a weekend of it, and then we'll stay Monday for a long weekend, and we'll go to the Jets game. Oh, sorry, guys. Sorry. That's even worse than us. Because the Jets are terrible. So that does it for us. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you don't know me and you're a Mets fan, throw some kind words our way, because I got a lot of, I'm getting made fun of in a lot on this social media, in my inbox and on my text messages. So, come, say hello. So that's it for us. Thank you to everybody, for watching during the season. And we hope you enjoyed the Mets stuff. Now we're on to Giants and Jets and Yankees, and we'll cover the whole postseason baseball because I still love baseball. So I still watch. I'll be there. I'm watching right now. I'll even watch the Yankees. But so we're going to cover all that, and then we got, the Knicks. The Knicks are coming up. So the Knicks are right there behind them, riding the Mets' coattails, ready to just knock you over again and disappoint you. That's what the New York sports does. So, hey, maybe the Giants have a quarterback. You never know. So don't forget, rate, review, and subscribe. Every little bit helps. Find us in any way you get your podcast. YouTube. Don't forget, leave us reviews. Good, bad, indifferent. We love them all. That's it. From the Brian Gunzel Studios, I'm Bob Walters. Let's go Mets. See ya.